Frostpunk is one of my favorite city builders. It takes that traditional city builder and combines survival mechanics and social dynamics to create something really different in a genre that has many wannabe city builders that are almost built on a template. But I've often wondered, why haven't other developers jumped on the Frostpunk formula of city builders? Now that is all about to change with DarkSwitch slated for release in March this year. This is a dark fantasy setting in an apocalyptic scenario. You could find many analogous systems and stuff in DarkSwitch to Frostpunk. But is this just a copycat of a classic or something more? I recently tried out a preview build of the game, and while I can't give you a scathing review or a glowingly positive review of the game, I can't give you my definitive thoughts on the game because it's still a game in development. I think I can tell you how this game is similar to Frostpunk and how maybe it's not quite the same. So what is DarkSwitch? As I said, it is set in an apocalyptic world where your people, who are elves, live up a giant tree and you must build your settlement vertically on that tree while keeping your people safe from the looming threat of a mysterious fog. Remember I said about things that are analogous to Frostpunk. The fog is the frost in this game, except it travels and creeps closer to your settlement. Just like the frost, the fog causes your citizens to get ill. But unlike Frostpunk, this is more of a mental affliction. They become mad, a bit cuckoo in the head, if they work too long within the fog. So you'll need to build some healing quarters to counter the effects of the fog on your citizens. No one knows what this fog is or where it comes from, what is causing the fog. But there is a certain evil that oozes out of it. The fog is like the fantasy version of the frost that also generates monsters that come after your settlement, which is where the whole tower defense mechanics come into play in DarkSwitch. The fog is the enemy that also spews more enemies for you to defend against, so settlement defense is something new here. Building your settlement vertically on this giant tree does have its challenges. Logistic issues with your citizens going about as fast and efficient as they could may be a bit of a problem, but thankfully building on a tree automatically generates stairs, which is somewhat sufficient, but you will discover more efficient and faster traversal modes later, like a zip line that lets your peeps zip along the settlements. But beyond this, the city building is pretty similar to other city builders and Frostpunk. You have places for your citizens to live, to work, extracting resources, providing food, healing, quarters, scouts, research, but while you stay safe and secure in the confines of your tree, you will need to build down on the dangerous ground to extract resources, where the fog rolls in at night. How far do you want to venture into the dangerous territory, or stay closer to your safe and secure giant tree? It's part of that risk-reward mechanic, and when you do build further away from the tree, you will need to provide housing, food and all that to ensure those working there won't have to travel too far to get to work, to get some rest and food. This map stays the same in every playthrough. It's a handcrafted map, so there's nothing procedurally generated, so you will be sort of optimizing your playthrough in new runs, right? Knowing where to actually look for resources and to build mini settlements around this map. Many of the buildings have expansions which you can build later if you have the space to add them, which adds a lot more depth to the city building portion. There's a lot more in DarkSwitch than I initially thought. Although I must say the fear meter, which is a bar that goes up or down, is like the opposite of the hope meter in Frostpunk. It serves the same purpose but goes in the opposite direction, so when this meter is filled 100%, it's probably game over for you. I do think they need to improve this a bit more in terms of telling you why fear increased to decrease. I don't know, I felt like it always was a bit of a mystery to me why this fluctuated at times. Now, the biggest difference in DarkSwitch and what I want to focus on here is in which the way it tells the story. DarkSwitch is less about the more dynamic social issues that pop up and more about a singular story that, granted, does have branching paths. This is not exactly linear. There are some decisions and choices you will have to make that will inform where the story takes you in any single playthrough. But this is more of a guided storytelling experience instead of anything dynamically happening like in Frostpunk. Your citizens in Frostpunk have things to say to you. At least it gives the illusion that they are reacting to your decisions and how you run the settlement. Not so much in DarkSwitch. Your citizens here have names but are nothing more than drones that eat, go to work and rest. While there are characters you will come across in the story, they are somewhat disassociated from your citizenry. I mean, I certainly felt like that. Maybe a bit of a missed opportunity, at least from what I played, or maybe they might add this for the final version of the game. I don't think a more guided story campaign is a bad thing. If the story is super interesting, it could be awesome. They have like a group called the Luminarch, which are kinda like the Inquisitors from Warhammer 40k. They go about stopping anyone they want on mere suspicion alone and perhaps torture them to death. You'll discover things about this particular group that are pretty interesting, and their motives perhaps might become clearer later on in the story. The tutorial phase, the first part of the story, is kinda on rails. I felt it was quite linear, just hit those objectives and move the story forward. But as I said, there are definitely a couple of times where there were decisions I had to make, so that keeps things interesting. There is a whole cool final climactic scenario in the first portion that I think had a rather surprising conclusion. I think it sets up the next part of the story pretty nicely. And I'm eager to see where the story goes. Will we find out what the fog is and what's causing it? There is a ton of stuff to research and unlock, so DarkSwitch is pretty wide in terms of the content it will be shipping with at launch. The game will have a campaign mode where you unravel the story and a sandbox mode, which for their first game, I think it's fine they focus on polishing it in these two game modes rather than giving us more options and a ton more game modes, of playing the game. Because I think DarkSwitch really does need the polish. They really need to focus on polishing this game up. This build I played was from December 2025, so things could have improved. There's a lot of information lacking in the build I played. No tooltips. I mean, come on, all games need tooltips these days, right? No information on how to do certain things, so I had to stumble around in the dark a little while playing this game. There is no encyclopedia page of sorts, so there is no knowledge repository I can refer to learn more about the game and its mechanics. Definitely performance isn't quite there yet. I would assume optimization would be the last thing they do, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that. Some UI stuff could be better too, like having a giant tree as your home is cool and all that, but I want to see my settlement clearly without these branches getting in the way. Perhaps have a more simplified view of the tree that hides those branches. These are small things, of course, but it is part of polishing the game for the final release. I hope that they really do these things. But ultimately, I do think DarkSwitch is a very interesting game, especially considering this is the first game for this studio. Now, I do think that some things are kind of amiss, like especially the characters of your citizens and how that's kind of not really used in the gameplay of the game, unfortunately. But the depth of the city building and the original story, it's here, and it could be enough to pull the game through. It's not necessarily objectively a better game than its inspiration. It is trying to be different while remaining somewhat familiar in terms of the mechanics and things like that. But it is trying to be its own game, not just a copycat. I do think it does need quite a bit more polish before it releases on March 12th this year. Maybe I'll think of streaming this game when it comes out. Now there is a demo out there that you can try out. You don't need to take my word for it, so try the demo out. Tell me what you think about the demo in the comments below, or just give me your general thoughts on the game. Anyway, thank you so much for watching and farewell, friends.